Welcome to Mamas on a Mission, the lifestyle show for moms that are on a mission to create an extraordinary life. I am your host, Virginia Jimenez, and today I have an awesome guest who's a friend. She's a keynote speaker. She's an author. She is a creative evangelist, Denise Jacobs.
Hi, everybody.
I am so happy to share Denise with you guys today. Seriously, she's awesome creative evangelist who has recently come out with a new book.
That's right.
And today we're going to talk about this book because I think it'll be so useful for all of you. The name of this book, tell us, Denise.
It's called Banish your Inner Critic, and it's about how to silence the voice of self-doubt so that you can unleash your creativity and start doing your best work, right?
How many times do we suffer from like mental whirlwinds that we get caught up in and
absolutely.
completely take over our lives, or we allow it to?
Right, and just shut us down.
And shut us down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it moves us to a place of fear and constant fear and not
just
living a most courageous life that we can live.
And being immobilized, right? Like just being paralyzed by our fears, which, you know, in the book, and it's something that's said very frequently, is that fear is false evidence appearing real, right?
Yeah.
So that you're reacting to this thing that actually doesn't really exist. It only exists in your head. And
Right.
when you have that kind of perspective, and I wrote this book in a lot of ways to be able to, oh, hello, Zealand wants to go outside. Let me do that for a moment.
Sure,
because-
go ahead. Let's take Zealand outside.
So, Mama's on a mission. This is real. Cats.
This is real stuff
cats
happening
and,
here.
and pets who want to go outside. I wrote the book because I wanted to give people basically like a toolkit of ways to start putting these thoughts and these self-doubts and these, you know, fears and everything into perspective, and to not just say, oh my God, it's totally bad, I have fear, you know, to just, or to say like, you shouldn't be doubtful, you should just believe in yourself, you know, and a bunch of affirmations which may or may not do anything for you, but to actually give tools and practices and exercises that you can, like, you know, just go back to any time. If you're feeling self-doubt, if you're feeling like you're not good enough, if you're feeling like you don't know enough, or you can't learn things fast enough, or if you're feeling like you're comparing yourself to other people and you're always finding yourself falling short, that you can go to a specific area in the book, like the chapter on comparisons, for example, and find a list of exercises that could help you put that feeling into perspective, put that, you know, perception into perspective, and change how you do things, change the way you're thinking about things, and effectively change how you're thinking things over time, which ends up changing you.
Absolutely. Change your thinking, change your life. That's how I see it.
It's
when you
very
change
true.
your thinking, you definitely can change your life. You have
Absolutely.
more access to that. And I really like the book because of how you structured it, because it is an actionable book. It's something that you read through, but you can stop and actually practice some of the things that you talked about. There's some story in it.
Yeah.
There's some storytelling in it. There's science in it. There's like talks of neuroplasticity and how we really can change our brains
Right.
with some of these exercises.
And that it's not, you know, one of the reasons I put the science in there was because I was actually afraid that people would look at it and dismiss the information or discount it if it didn't have some kind of basis in scientific fact. And so I did a lot of research. I read a fantastic book called Train Your Brain, Change Your Mind, Change Your Mind, Change Your Brain. Anyway, by Sarah Begley. Hold on, I have it right here on my bookshelf.
She has it right there.
That's right, here it is. Train your mind, change your brain, just like I said.
There you go.
You can see how I have like tabbed it out because I used it so extensively. It's by Sharon Begley. And what she did was she actually went and studied with a lot of, like, interviewed and studied a lot of the work of people who were neuroscientists, but also Buddhists. The Dalai Lama actually created this summit where he brought in neuroscientists to talk about basically neuroplasticity and everything, and kind of how it relates to Buddhism and mindfulness and all this stuff. And it turns out that there's all of these incredibly strong correlations. And a lot of studies that were done by people who are neuroscientists who actually had some, you know, training or leanings towards mindfulness and Buddhism and things like that, who actually use these practices to help people with very, very deep depression, people with obsessive compulsive disorder, manic depression, things like that. And they were actually able to heal these conditions with these practices.
Wow.
I mean, like, phenomenal things that, people think, well, this is long term. This is, you can't, if you have depression, you're always
you're always going to be depressed, right?
But they actually were able to heal through basically cognitive behavioral training,
some practices that they...
right, metacognitive learning, things like that. So basically, when you take yourself out of the level of saying, this is happening to me, or these are my thoughts, these thoughts and me are the same thing. When you take yourself out and you basically get to a meta level, right, like a higher level where you're saying, oh, look, I'm having these thoughts, but I'm having these thoughts. These thoughts aren't who I am. It totally changes the game. And so in my book, a lot of the foundations of all the practices are having this level of awareness, having this kind of metacognition and this level of awareness of, I'm thinking these thoughts, but these aren't thoughts that I have to actually believe are true.
Right.
These are thoughts that my brain is creating for some reason or another, but it doesn't mean that I have to act on them. And that I can actually, because I realize now that I'm thinking these thoughts, I can make a choice to think different thoughts.
You have several creative doses in the book. Within each section, there's like an exercise that you can do to practice it. And for that section about moving the thoughts, really it's about observing the thoughts.
Yes.
That was the first thing for that creative dose, observing the thought and then replacing the thought with something else. So what are some questions that people could ask themselves when they're analyzing the thought?
Like, is this actually true? Like, is this a categorically true statement or a true thought? Like, if you're, so my book is really focused around creativity, but between you, me, and the camera and the audience, that creativity is, in a lot of ways, is a vehicle to actually get to this deeper work. And so you can apply this to a lot of different things. You may not necessarily be like, I'm trying to be the most creative person possible, but you could be like, I'm actually just trying to work through my stuff and like get to like a different place and get to like a higher level.
Yeah.
And so, if, let's say for the sake of argument that this was about creativity and you were saying something like, everything I do creatively is crap. Well,
is that true?
Is that absolutely, without a doubt, true? And what you'll find is the answer is no, that is not true. Because there are some things that probably are like amazeballs. And there's some things that probably need some work. And there's some things that are probably half-baked. But guess what? It doesn't mean that you stop creating because you've got a 33% chance success rate. Because those things that are okay can be improved upon, and the things that are half-baked can be just the kind of kernel of something that ends up expanding, or they're just not ready yet. They're half-baked, so you have to keep letting them bake, right, until they're done. I came into realizing that self-compassion, in my research I ended up finding that self-compassion is an incredibly powerful tool. And that it also transforms depression and all of these things. And that when you combine mindfulness and self-compassion together, it's like the amazing,
magic.
It's like magic, right? Or, basically mindfulness, self-compassion, and neuroplasticity, like our ability to have neuroplasticity is like the trifecta. Like it is just like the divine triangle. That is like the foundation of so much change that positive change you can do in your life.
To create such a book like this with all this, what did it take for you?
Girl, I researched, so it's actually really interesting. So the kind of the journey of the book, I planned writing this book in 2015, but with my speaking schedule and everything, like 2015 was an extraordinarily busy year. I had 30 speaking engagements between March and December,
right?
Which meant that I was basically traveling about 3 out of 4 weeks every month.
Wow.
It was a lot. It was really a lot. So, unsurprisingly, at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, I was completely burnt out and I was exhausted. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to be writing a book, but what?
Yeah.
So I gave myself permission to do about 2 or 3 months of research. And so I basically would sit down and I would read a book, and I would take really extensive notes and everything. Incidentally, most of the books that I read during that period of time only ended up being part of the book, but they weren't as major a part of the book as I thought they were going to be.
Okay.
I was going to self-publish the book, and then I ended up kind of serendipitously meeting the owner of a small publishing company, local publishing company, and ended up going ahead and signing on with this publishing company. That kind of kicked me into gear, right? Got my butt into gear, and I wrote an outline and book overview and all that stuff. And so then I actually started writing chapters in earnest in April. I did a lot of research, but then what ended up kind of happening was I didn't really know what I was going to need for the chapter until I got to the chapter.
Okay.
So I ended up then, once I okay, I'm going to write this chapter on, when people feel like they're not creative and they kind of deny their creativity, something that I call creativity denial. And so then I would do a big, thing of research for that, and read a lot of articles, maybe pull in some books, and then I would take all of that, kind of compile all of that, take all those things, and then use that information and extract from that. Yeah. So that's basically kind of how it happened up until kind of midway, where I had to go back and revise the first chapter, because the first version of the chapter, my editor was like, nope. And I was like, okay. And rightly so, I'm glad she said no, because what ended up happening was, because I was redoing the chapter, I ended up doing a huge another research push, and that's when I would do research as it was needed, but then I ended up doing this big research push for about a month and a half, and then the research that I did for that ended up informing the next 4 chapters that I wrote.
Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting that happened. It's like one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, this is a no. We get caught up in wanting things to just flow almost perfectly, right? And so you pass this on to your editors. They say no, and this was an opportunity. Instead of it being truly an obstacle, it was an opportunity for you to add even more value and see that you can create this trifecta in your book.
Right. I mean, I discovered the soul of the book from that, right. From that research and everything. I was just like, it was the missing piece that I had been looking for that I hadn't found. So it's the first version of the first chapter was basically me spouting off a lot of, things from white men, for lack of a word, very learned, PhDs, old white guys, basically. And when it was kind of a couple of things that happened. I had a speaking engagement in Oslo, and I ended up, again, another serendipitous thing, sitting at a table next to this table of these 3 men, and there's one man who I just kept looking at and just thinking, he just looks really interesting. There's something about him that's just really compelling, and I don't know what it is, other than the fact that he was good looking and tall. But there was something really interesting about him, and we ended up kind of getting into this conversation. He kind of kept looking over at me there's something interesting about you, and we're like, there's nothing there. And we ended up getting into this amazing conversation, and it was the longer we talked, the more he was just yeah, because we're all, immensely powerful, and we don't realize our power and what we need to do. And I was just like, what? And so, long story short, we ended up having this conversation, and a lot of the things that he was saying during this conversation were the things that I wanted to say in my book, but that I didn't have the courage to say.
Ooh.
And so meeting him and having the conversation that we had, and then we met for lunch and had another really amazing conversation, gave me the courage, I was like the green light, no, it's your book. You say whatever you want.
Right.
It's you have got carte blanche here. If you're not saying it in this book, where are you going to say it?
Right.
And if people don't like it, they can put the book down. They don't have to read it.
Exactly.
Ain't no gun to your head or anything like that. And so it was just kind of having that was just that encouragement, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to be talking about other people's ideas. I'm supposed to have my idea, and I'm supposed to grab other people's stuff to support my idea, not try to cobble together my own idea from other people's. In a lot of ways, I really found my voice in that period of time, because then I started being all like, girl, you know, you need to just blah 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 blah. You know, you don't have to do that. You can do this. Like, you gotta believe in yourself. Like, and I started having more of that tone than this kind of more like kind of academic
The
tone.
PhD that you were talking about earlier.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I could get for this book.
I love that. I love that. That's what I liked about when I was reading the book. I'm like, this is you. I can hear your voice in the book. That's why I felt like you were talking to a friend. It's just you being authentic, and that authentic self is what we need to be more of.
Absolutely.
Really tap into that and not trying to be like anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I love that you were courageous enough and you did share your book the way it would come out of you naturally, not like anybody else. And I love that you're sharing that story too, because I think sometimes we get really caught up in wanting it to fit a mold.
Yes.
You know, I've done that myself,
Big
you know,
time.
still breaking through those kind of walls in my mind of thinking it has to be a certain way.
So it's interestingly enough, like, I feel like one of my big lessons that I'm kind of continuously revisiting, it's like, it's just going to keep, the universe is going to just keep like presenting it in front of me until I finally, you know, like, okay, I've got it. But it keeps popping up, and like in the last year, is that the whole practice and the whole idea that you have to do things the way you do things. Like, you can't look, and it's so hard to do, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we don't have a strong sense of self, or we're building our sense of self, we're constantly looking outward to try to say, like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to do this. And I feel like we're also not taught, and we're not encouraged to listen to kind of our authentic selves, and to trust our gut, and to like hear that inner voice of ours. We've been trained to listen to external voices, and to think those authoritative voices, or, you know, how people are successful outside of yourself, that's how you're success. That's success.
Right.
That's how you're successful. And one of the things that I've been learning kind of over and over, that keeps presenting itself, and it's like, you know, slowly but surely it's sinking in, is that how any one person is successful is uniquely tailored to that person. Like, you can look and say, well, and I get caught up with this all the time. You can look at this other person, you say, well, their book was successful because they had this marketing thing, they had this publicity, they had, you know, this many people on their mailing list, you know, they were able to get on this show or talk at these companies or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but that is like uniquely tailored to that person.
Right.
And the way that my book is successful may be completely different, because I'm a completely different person, and everything in my life is structured differently.
Right.
And my message is different, and my audience is different, et cetera, et cetera.
And your
et cetera.
voice is different
My
too.
voice is different. And so it's so easy, I feel like it's so seductive, right, to get caught up in that mode, and thinking, you know, I'm going to do a podcast, and this is how it's done.
Right.
Right. I have to do it this way. I have to release it on iTunes. I have to because that's how you do podcasts.
Right.
But then, you know, I love the fact that you're just like, you know what, I found that this actually works the best for me.
Yes.
Sitting down and talking to somebody is what works for me, and so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it's like phenomenal. And so for the people who are watching this, I really encourage you to like, and I'm not saying it's easy, it is effort, right? But it's like, you know, it's kind of like exercising. It starts off being like, super, if you're going to do a couch to 5K, getting off the couch sometimes is the hardest part, where you're just like, I don't want to get off the couch is comfortable. But
Right.
the more and more you get out and you run, the easier it gets, until, you know, at some point your body craves it, and you're sitting on the couch, and your body's like, what are you doing sitting on the couch? You're like, I have no idea, let's get up and go run. I'm going to feel like crap if I don't. It's really important to like kind of make that kind of pact with yourself, and to really make a commitment to saying, okay, I am going to listen for what works for me.
Right.
I am going to really be cognizant. I'm going to be really respectful of, you know, what feels good for me and what feels onerous. what feels like that would be really enjoyable, and what feels like, oh no, oh hell no, that's not happening,
Right.
And to really do that and to really follow that, because that's your particular trail, that's your particular path to success. And I feel like we are all given that information.
Yes.
It's just a matter of whether or not we listen to it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
My very first keynote that I developed for my very, very first keynote speaking engagement, which was thrilling, right? They were like, we wanted you to be the closing keynote for the conference. And I was like, yeah. And so I created a new talk that had kind of been kicking around in my head for a while. And it was actually kind of awesome, because it was the first time I actually got it was actually the second time I got a standing ovation, but I got a standing ovation for the talk, which, given the fact that it was a new talk and everything, was pretty awesome. So then I decided that I was going to use this talk as kind of the basis of like a tribe building, tribe movement. And so this talk was ended up calling it the Creativity Revolution, and revolution, the R is in parentheses, because it's kind of like a revolution that's an evolution. So it's kind of like a big change, but that comes from kind of like an evolving of self. And I had my web guy put up a web page, and if you join it, it tweets out that I joined the revolution and everything. And I was like, I'm going to make this whole tribe building thing around it. And listen, it was a cute idea. And I think I got everything. I did the talk, I created the talk in 2013. I got the page up and everything in 2014, because I was going to give the talk at South by Southwest, and I wanted to have all this stuff in place for that. And then I really, I was working. I was getting more speaking engagements. I was traveling a lot. I didn't really have the time or the bandwidth to put towards really kind of thinking the whole thing through and strategizing it and figuring out how it fit with everything else.
Right.
So it's great. It's a great keynote. I love giving it. I'm going to be giving it in June at a conference in Washington, D.C., which I'm super excited about.
Awesome. Congrats.
But the thing that's really cool about it is that when I was writing this book, all of these ideas that I had previously, that I didn't know how they all worked together, suddenly became clear how they worked together. So a lot of the concepts that I talked about in the Creativity Revolution talk, I ended up incorporating as basically the last chapter of this book. And so now all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but now because of this book, the talks that I have and the keynotes that I have are actually all interrelated. They always were, but I didn't see the thread, right? And so now it's Banish, Your Inner Critic and Creativity Revolution are not these totally separate, kind of polarized things, what they kind of seemed before, but they are on a continuum.
Right.
And there's I didn't know that in 2013 or 2014 or 2016. Or, I didn't know that until
Right.
I wrote that. I wrote that chapter in February.
Right.
Or, January. And it's and so then now this has actually expanded what I can offer to people. And so now I've developed 2 new workshops that are kind of in this series, and I'm focusing it towards leadership and, career development and everything, which is before it was always about creativity. And it's still, again, creativity is the vehicle,
right?
But it is this vehicle to get you to this kind of higher place in your life. And so that to me is really exciting. I didn't know. It wasn't perfect.
That brings up a good point, because sometimes we're doing things and we're trusting the process. We don't necessarily connect the dots until later on, like Steve Jobs says in his Stanford commencement speech, right? Where later on he was able to look back and see, oh my God, it made so much sense, all these little things that I was doing.
Right.
And so for all of you out there that might be working on some projects where it's intuitively you're I should be working on this, but I know that there's something more. Don't give up just because it's not the grand scheme of what you think it should be.
Right.
You know, we go at the speed of life, right? Let's go at this moment.
Go at the speed of life.
Yes, let's go at the speed of life.
Yeah.
You know, in our minds, again, like our thoughts take over.
My brain moves at the speed of light, just about. But I forget to go at the speed of life, and so I love that.
I think a lot of us forget. I forget too. I have to remind myself all the time, like, whoa, hold on a second. Yeah, because then that's when suffering comes in, because our thoughts think, this is where things should be. Why am I not there yet? No. This is where you should be right now with where you are. So when you created that was where you needed to be at that moment.
Exactly.
And now look, you're connecting the dots, and it's taking you to another thing, which is now expanding the vision and mission that you have.
Absolutely.
You know, tying into that.
It's amazing. And it's like one of those things where I was just like, when it happened, I was just like, oh my God, I can pull all of this stuff in, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's perfect. It's like it was just sitting there just waiting. Like, I'll just wait. I'm good. I'll be patient. And then it was like, I'm ready. Yay.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, great. You get in the book, and you get in the book,
right?
And you get in the book. Everything gets in the book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like Oprah when she's giving everything away.
Right. Look underneath your chair. There's a book.
It took a lot of people to make this happen. Was there ever a time in your life like you felt like you should be doing everything by yourself?
Absolutely.
And how did that impact you?
So trying to do everything by yourself is basically like the quickest way to put yourself in the grave as possible, right? And it was really interesting because last year I went to a therapist who's a hypnotherapist, and whom I love. She's amazing. If you live in Miami, go to Coral Gables Hypnosis and ask for Debbie Rodriguez, because she is phenomenal. She's phenomenal.
All right, Debbie, get
it. So I was working with this hypnotherapist, Debbie, and I don't remember. I went to her because I was feeling very actually creatively blocked and stuck and like all of this stuff. And so she was like, okay, let's work it out. And at one point I was saying, I just feel like I have so much stuff to do. And she stopped me and she looked at me, she put her hand on my arm and she said, it was never meant to be your sole responsibility. And I was like, and she was like, no, you weren't ever supposed to do all of this yourself. You're supposed to ask for help.
Yes. And
it's something, again, one of those ones that the universe is like, here you go. I'm just going to keep giving it to you until you get it. And so I started really like tuning into when people said, I really want to help you, instead of me going, oh, that's nice. Yeah. I would say, okay, I need this kind of help.
Yeah.
Somebody would say, I really want to help you with, like if you need somebody to read the book or you need somebody to proofread or something. I was like, great. And so I had like 3 what I call book buddies, who were kind of like, I have 4, like one at the beginning, and then she had a baby. She and her partner had a baby, and so then she was kind of out of the loop for a while. But then I went to Australia. I actually went on some of my speaking engagements, and I met 2 women who were from Australia and 1 man who was from New Zealand.
Okay. And
so I had these book buddies who were like on the other side of the world, who I would have these kind of standing, like Skype dates with, and I would send them the chapter, and then they would we'd get on the call and we'd talk about it, and they'd give me their feedback and their impressions and stuff, and it was so amazing to get that kind of help. And then just recently, I needed to get book endorsements from various and sundry people, and I made a long scrolling list of about 160 people who I knew personally, who were influencers or authors or, company owners and things like that I wanted to get endorsements from. And then I got to the point where it was time to ask for their endorsements, and I froze. And when it was time to actually write the emails, I was actually nervous because I was really afraid to ask for this favor from these people.
Right.
I felt like I was bothering them and all this stuff. And the interesting thing that happened, what happened was...
Tell me!
Girl, is when I started asking people, they were so enthusiastically like positive and responses. So like one guy sent me a thing and he said, hey, I've got a podcast and I'm doing a new format this next year, and I'm just having people kind of record stuff, and then I'm just gonna like have them play it. Would you be willing to do like a little mini class recording? And I wrote back and I was like, sure, Paul, I'd love to. And I was like, and now here's my ask to you. Would you be willing to endorse my book? And he was like, yeah, no problem. Send me the manuscript. And I sent him a manuscript, and he was like, oh, well, did you want something short? Here. And he like sent me, within an hour, he had sent me an endorsement.
Wow.
Like, and I was like, what? And so then like later that day, I had a tweet go out that announced the book, and this one guy who has a really popular creativity blog called Creative Something, his name's Tanner Christensen, he had liked the tweet or something, and I messaged him on Twitter, and I said, hey, could you retweet that? And he was like, no problem. And I was like, and while I'm at it, would you be willing to write an endorsement for my book? And he was like, I'd love to. And then I was like, and then I wrote him back and I said, great, this is like so great. I'm doing a happy dance. And he writes me back, that makes two of us doing a happy dance. And I was just like, I don't know what that fear thing was in my head, that hesitation, and that everybody was so nice. And so again, false evidence appearing real.
Exactly.
Right? So, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you're supposed to, people actually want to help.
Yes.
Like when somebody asks you for somebody that you care about or somebody that you know asks you for something, like are usually like, I can't believe they asked me for this. Or like if it's something that you can do easily or willingly, are usually like, yeah, I'm happy
Especially
to.
if you care about them a lot. You're like, oh my God, yeah, you need this? I'll definitely help you out.
And so that's the other thing. Like, I don't remember how somebody put it, but they said, you are actually robbing people from the opportunity to give to you. And you're also robbing yourself from the opportunity to learn how to receive.
Yes.
And so when I get into these moments where I'm just like, I want to ask the people, bother them, I have to kind of remember that. Like, wait a minute, people actually want to help. And they want to be able to contribute to your success. Like they can point to you and they can say, she's successful because I helped her, right? Like, or, whatever. So give people that opportunity to have that. It actually, there's reams and scounds of studies that show that people feel better when they're helpful. Right. They actually, there's a whole, what's it called? The altruistic effect or something?
I believe it is
altruism effect.
Yeah, there's a TED talk around, there's like a research that was being done around it, how oxytocin is produced in the body when when somebody asks them for help and they're like, oh yeah, I would love to help you. Something happens within themselves where they are. It is that altruistic feeling that comes up, and it's this feeling because that oxytocin, and then you bond with that person more. Voila, we start connecting with other people as a result of just asking for help and allowing them to come into our lives. It's
perfect.
And allowing to receive, to be open to receiving.
It's perfect. So I recommend it. I'm for it. Yeah. Like I said, something that I'm still practicing and something I'm still becoming comfortable with, but the more I do it, the better I feel. And the less I feel like I'm in this world alone. Yeah. Right? And that's, I think, one of the things that's like one of the biggest fears of people is that they feel like, I'm afraid I'm going to die alone or whatever. And it's like, no, but you don't, we're not. We're actually, there's a lot of people on the planet. We are very much connected with everybody else if only we allow it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, thank you. Yeah, and I wanted to definitely talk about that because I think it's important. I think that a lot of people don't do that. Moms, all sorts of people. It doesn't matter. You can be a mom, not a mom. I mean, sometimes some people really have a hard time with asking for help and allowing that. And it takes, for your book, I saw your acknowledgement page. It's like long, lots of people. And you were so, just like the way you express, I'm telling you, the book is great because of the way she writes. It sounds like she's writing to you, like personally, to you. So, and I'm reading it, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so awesome. All the people that contributed to this. And if you weren't open to that happening, how would this book come out? I mean, it's such a beautiful book, and I think it's going to be so helpful for anyone that picks it up. Oh, thank you I so do, much. Because I think, again, it's actionable. It's not just a read. It's like, take your time with it, go through it. You can actually go to the section that will be helpful for you in your life right now, whether it's comparison or some other factor that's happening for you. I think it's a great read. So I hope other people pick it up and help banish their inner critic, because really, we can't believe everything we think. And the more practice we get observing our thoughts, exercising, how to distinguish between, is this real or is this not real, the more courageous, the happier we'll feel.
Exactly.
And the more bold we actually live a more extraordinary life, right? Which is what we're trying to achieve here.
Absolutely.
So I want you to share what would be a quote or a poem or something. A piece, a lovely piece. I'm going to snap my fingers.
All right.
We're going to pretend we're in spoken word night.
Right now. Okay, so this is a poem by Rumi, which basically you can read anything by Rumi and you'll pretty much be satisfied because he's amazing. And this one's called, speaking of comparisons, it's called An Awkward Comparison. This physical world has no two things alike. Every comparison is awkwardly rough. You can put a lion next to a man, but the placing is hazardous to both. Say the body is like this lamp. It has to have a wick and oil, sleep and food. If it doesn't get those, it will die, and it's always burning those up, trying to die. But where is the sun in this comparison? It rises, and the lamp's light mixes with the day. Oneness, which is the reality, cannot be understood with lamp and sun images. The blurring of a plural into a unity is wrong. No image can describe what of our fathers and mothers, of our grandfathers and grandmothers remains. Language does not touch the one who lives in each of us.
Wow. I love that. That's deep. Because even the language part, like we create meanings all of it. We create meanings to our words too, and that impacts our thinking as well.
Exactly. And it's almost like describing something doesn't get to the essence, and it doesn't get to the essence of who we are inside. We're so much grander, and this is actually something that I said in the book. We're so much grander than what we see, and we're so much bigger and stronger and amazing than the fears that we allow ourselves to be defined by.
Right.
So awesome. Having said that,
I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so authentic in your book with us today and courageously sharing your journey as well as like all these insightful moments throughout your journey.
No,
thank you so
very
much.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
So where can people find you, and is there anything that you want to share with?
Absolutely. So first thing, go to denisejacobs.com and go to my website. You can see all of the things that I've done. Definitely, if you're having a conference or an event at your company, I would love to come and speak at your company or your event because keynote speaking is my jam. Also, Banish your inner critic. You can go to innercriticbook.com and you can go and read about the book. You can buy a pre-sale copy. Their pre-sale copies are available now. The book is available on June 6th. And also, you can sign up on the list, and when you sign up on the list, you can download a free sample chapter.
Awesome.
So that you're not just, like, I think I'm going to buy this book. Sign up on the list. I'm sending out announcements now, starting to have like a nice, reminder of things and articles and things like that are related to the content in the book. So definitely sign up on the list, get your download chapter, buy a pre-sale copy, innercriticbook.com, and also go to denisejacobs.com.
Thank you again, Denise. Remember that your circumstances don't define you. Your decisions and your actions do. Until next time, be sure to share this if you like it and subscribe to the channel.
Excellent.